What would you do if you found yourself stuck in a strange house, with a crazed old woman calling out to someone you've never heard of? A house abandoned for years, yet filled with disturbing signs of life, and a secret that refuses to stay buried. Beat that like button and subscribe, and lock in. Buckle up, boys and girls. My buddy and I just experienced some crazy creepy stuff while on a trip to Red Rocks in Colorado. I write a lot of things down anyway, and so I figured I might as well post a story here and see what you guys think. So who here has used Airbnb? Raise his hand. I think I've used it no less than 20 times. All great experiences up until this point. Seriously, I need to go ahead and preface this by saying that while I could send you a link to this house, it wouldn't do you any good because it's not there anymore, but we'll get to that. I'm guessing that since you're reading this, you're probably a bit like me, a big reader, kind of weird, generally a fan of being scared. More power to you. My buddy, we'll call him John, is the same way. So a few weeks ago, me and John saw that one of our favorite bands was going to be playing at Red Rocks. We've been talking about making a trip up there for years now. We live in Florida, and the timing seemed perfect. Both of our wives are pregnant, and the thought process was that if we were going to make a trip like this, it was now or never. The drive was going to take about 24 hours, so we decided we would drive until about midnight after we got off work, find a place to crash, and finish the drive the next day. I immediately hopped onto Airbnb and started looking for somewhere cool to stay. Remember what I said earlier about being into the slightly creepy? Well, I'm scrolling through potential places to stay in Tennessee, since it's about 8 hours from Tampa, where we live. I come across this majestic, plantation-style house in some place called Sequatchie, Tennessee. The pictures look amazing, and it only costs $30 per night to stay there. $30 gets you the upstairs suite, complete with its own bathroom. You can tell that it sits on a tall hill in the woods, overlooking a fairly large valley. It's a sprawling, two-story house, white wood, with ferns hanging off the wraparound porch. It looks like something from To Kill a Mockingbird, and I'm immediately sending John screenshots like, dude, we have got to stay here. He texts back, equally enthused. He does point out, however, that the place has no reviews. Now, in my book, this is an Airbnb no-no, but the place seems so cool, and it's so cheap, and what can I say? I was feeling spontaneous, so I booked it. Strict cancellation policy be damned. I mean, you can't beat $15 per person. We would play rock, paper, scissors to see who got the bed when we got there. A couple weeks go by and the day of our trip finally arrives. We both get off work at 4 and meet up, already packed and ready to go. We knew that the trip from Tampa to Sequatchie would take 8 hours, so we didn't waste any time getting on the interstate. Honestly, the drive up there was pretty uneventful, so I will spare you the details. By the time we make it into Tennessee, it's approaching midnight. When we get off the interstate and head toward the address, it's dark. It doesn't get this dark in Tampa. Apparently, the town of Sequatchie isn't overly concerned with things like streetlights. The cell service finally dwindled to nothing about 15 minutes after getting off the interstate. Surprise. But John was smart enough to screenshot the route beforehand so that it wouldn't be lost. 5-star wingman there. Ladies and gentlemen, we navigate some serious back roads, eventually leaving the pavement behind for a long, gravel driveway. It didn't stick out at the time as much as it does in retrospect, but the mailbox was actually lying on the ground, causing us to miss the turn on the first pass. Only after getting out in the pitch darkness and examining the fading address stickers by the light of John's phone did we determine that we were indeed on the right track. We continue up the driveway, if not with a little more skepticism than before. It winds on 12 minutes through some mountainous territory. At times the grade became serious enough that I thought I might have to put my 4Runner into 4-wheel drive. Martin, company's here. John and I were both frozen in place, our eyes locked together. We had both been so transfixed by the discovery of the flat tires that the sound of this woman's frantic shouts had put us into a kind of terrified stupor. Martin, my stomach felt like a twisted knot. John was facing away from the house, and over his shoulder I could see what appeared to be an old woman in a white nightshirt. She was barefoot and pacing along the edge of the woods near where we had just come from, barely visible in the edge of the dim yellow light. My eyes widened as she leaned towards the trees and raised her hands to her mouth. Martin, it's time. John found his voice. Sean, what is she doing? What is she doing out here in the middle of the night? Shoo, we need to be quiet. We had both ducked behind the car, but I doubted that she'd be able to see us here in the darkness anyway. I peeped over the hood toward the sounds. She was walking rapidly back and forth, slightly hunched over, staring into the dark trees. We must have run right by her on our way back to the car without even noticing. The thought of her lurking in the shadows while we hurry out of the house sent a chill down my spine. Just as I thought this, she screamed once more, her voice cracking with a strain. She paused for just a moment as if listening, and then disappeared into the woods. This old lady literally just ran into the dark woods. No flashlight, no shoes. The sound of the night insects seemed to swell in the absence of her screams. Have you ever been in an extremely high-pressure situation? The adrenaline rush really does make it it feel like time slows down. In that moment of surreality, two facts pushed themselves to the front of my mind, bright red and almost tangible. We had lost cell service miles before reaching the house. Driving out of here in our car was not an option. The tires weren't just low, the rims were resting on the gravel driveway. That wouldn't work, no sir. We wouldn't get 10 feet. John seemed to have reached a similar conclusion and raised a fantastic counterpoint. I bet they have a phone in there, like a house phone. Old people love landlines. True, but I saw one glaring issue. I really don't want to go back inside. We don't even know that it's empty. She could be back any time, I said. I noticed a pickup truck parked near a dilapidated shed near the other side of the house. It looked ancient and rusted, but all the tires seemed to be full of air. Potential. Let's go check that truck for keys. John nodded, and I was already running, dropping my backpack as I took off. I wasn't sure who Martin was, and I wanted things to stay that way. We cleared the yard in 15 seconds, and the owls had now obscured our view of the woods where the old woman had disappeared. I jerked the handle and it swung open with a groan. John was on the passenger side and already had his cell phone light on. Together we searched for the keys, above the visors, in the cup holders, every nook and cranny. We found nothing. As neither of us knew how to hotwire a car, we needed a new plan. Okay, I said. I vote we run for it. John opened his mouth to protest, and I talked louder. You saw that lady. She's completely bat's hit. She slashed our tires, and now she's running to get help. She could come back any time. I know, John said, but you have to remember, we basically drove up a mountain to get here, and I don't remember seeing a single car after we got off the interstate. It could be hours before we find somebody, and that nut job could just run us down in her truck. A good point. The prospect of wandering in the dark for hours loomed ominously, so I relented. Fine, but we have to go now if we're going. And then we were running again, aiming for that sickish yellow glow near the kitchen door, the air rushing past my ears. As we got closer, I could see the spot where the woman had run into the trees. Nothing there but darkness. Now, despite our rush, we paused for a moment outside the door to peer through the frosted glass. Still pitch black dark. I took a deep breath and pushed the door in, and again we were met with the smell of air that has been sitting still for ages. The kitchen seemed to yawn backwards into deeper darkness, and my cell phone light swept over the countertops in search of a phone or a cord. John checked the other side and we met near the back wall. Nothing, I whispered. John nodded his consensus. Outside the window that faced the woods, I saw only the empty yard and the dark tree line shifting in the breeze. Let's check one more room and then get out of here. The door out of the kitchen opened onto a long hallway. The other end of it was just visible at the edge of my flashlight's beam. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, and I pulled my legs forward with considerable effort. I got to the end of the hallway and stopped. John bumped into me and actually pushed me further into the room. I leaned back to try and escape from what I was seeing, but it did no good. I felt like my legs were about to give out. Every wall was covered in thick, black writing, symbols I had never seen before, symbols that I had seen before. My name, but one word stuck out, written on the floor, written on the ceiling in that same childlike scrawl. And then I was screaming, and John was screaming, and as I began to voice the word run, I realized that a third voice had joined the cacophony. Her ancient, gray face was pressed against the window, black eyes darting back and forth as she cackled. Our eyes met and she was laughing and screaming and foaming at the mouth. Oh God, Martin. He's coming. Martin is coming. And she was sobbing and laughing and screaming, oh God, help us. And her face was twisted in glee and agony as she smashed it through the window and kept screaming as the began to flow. Martin is here. He's here. And my legs were moving and the breath left my lungs in gasps and spurts as I followed John back through the kitchen door and into the yard. And oh God, why was it so bright out here in the middle of the night? But we ran down the drive and into the woods, and we ran until we couldn't anymore, and then we ran some more. John, shaking me. The sun was shining. A truck was coming. Gotta get up. The fog lifted a bit and I saw John running towards the road with his arms out. The kid looked 17 at the most. I heard him say he had room, and I stumbled out of the culvert in which I had apparently been lying. The clock on the dash said 7:12. When the police got there, the house was on fire and had already burned most of the way down. When John and I recounted the story, they reacted with visible skepticism. I can't blame them, really. Nothing unusual at the scene. Definitely no bodies. I still don't know who the old lady was, or Martin for that matter. They told us that the house had been abandoned for as long as they could remember. We're both fine, for the most part. All that to say, be careful when using Airbnb. Most of the ones that have a few decent reviews are probably safe. Could there have been something or someone else in the house with us that night? What would you have done if you were in their shoes? Let me know in the comments.